before I get going, I'm just going to take a selfie with this amazing room of people. So if you can all just look like you're enjoying yourself and you're about to have a great day here at Fastflow Conf. Fab to be back here again. My name is Matt. I'm a part of the specialist team at AWS. I spend a lot of my time working with our biggest, most complicated, most challenging customers around how to do stuff with containers and serverless and organization and platform engineering. And I thought I'd just sort of set the scene thinking about how do we end up here in 2025 talking about platform engineering. Most of my career in technology, we've been coming up with new buzzwords and new methodologies and trying to work out how to build software right. And kind of I graduated around the time of the Agile Manifesto and, hey, everybody, we should start working together more closely and building things quickly in small iterations and shipping. And then a few years later, they said that was really good and we've invented all these frameworks and we're doing safe and all this stuff, but we're still not talking to each other. So we're going to invent this new term called DevOps, and that means that finally our ops guys and our developers are actually going to talk to each other, and we're going to start to build practices, and we're going to think about what continuous delivery actually looks like in production. People like us, Amazon, and all the other cloud vendors came along, and we thought this stuff is really, really complicated, and people started building abstractions and open source tooling that made it easier to manage all this stuff that we keep building and shifting. And so we had this kind of cloud native revolution, and all this Kubernetes stuff, and the CNCF started off, and it's still really difficult. And so then we started to build this new practice called platform engineering, where we're going to turn all of this thinking that we've been doing for the last decade and a half and start to think about how can we productize it so we're making it really, really easy for developers to engage with. And that's kind of where we are today. And why does it matter? This stuff is difficult. If you're building modern distributed systems on the cloud, there's a whole bunch of stuff that developer teams have to think about. One of the lenses you can use to explore that is AWS's well-architected framework, but it applies to pretty much everyone. You're coming to work, you want to write some code, you've got to think about, how am I going to operate this? Is it secure? Is it sustainable? How are we going to make it reliable? How are we going to make it performant? So there's a whole bunch of kind of thinking that you need to do around your architecture before you actually get to writing business value. And there's an interesting report from Google who said that if you're not doing platform engineering, you turn up at work, about 65% of your day is thinking about all this other stuff, and the remaining 35%, if you're just on a kind of coding day, might actually be writing some code. Some business value. The kind of goal to do this from the beginning is thinking about how do we do things better and faster. So obviously we're starting to build some metrics around this, and I'm sure this room knows all about Dura metrics. I like to categorize them into things that are there to help us get features in production faster, and things that help us stop blowing things up. And there's often a perceived tension between these things. I've heard a lot of times how you can either have it fast or you can have it good. I really like this quote from Dave, and it's nice to have him in the audience. If you want to go fast, you have to build high quality systems. You need really, really solid engineering to move fast. And in order to build high quality things, you've got to build them quickly as a small set of steps. So I think that's a really interesting goal. And part of what we're trying to achieve with platform engineering. And what that kind of then transfers into is a whole bunch of capabilities that we associate with platform engineering. So this is a capability matrix out of a group called the CNOE, the Cloud Native Operational Excellence group, a group that I take part in, a bunch of really, really smart people from smart customers who are thinking about how do we make this stuff better, how do we build blueprints and best practices, and we need to do a whole bunch of stuff to be a mature platform engineering organization, from compute, observability, secrets management, workflows. I kind of think that they're burying the lead. Somewhere buried in this diagram is actually continuous delivery. That's the bit that we're actually trying to do with all of this stuff. And it's somewhere hiding inside all these pieces of technology we have to deliver. And so I think that it's a great piece of work, but I think that a lot of the stuff that we're doing is kind of framing the challenge in slightly the wrong way. But it's happening. So the guys at Gartner say everybody's doing this. 80% of people are going to be doing platform engineering in large organizations by next year. And this will be the time that we're going to finally solve that central problem of developers and operators working together. Let's hope so. The reality on the ground is different. I pulled out a whole bunch of reports from all sorts of people. They're all surveys, and kind of how accurate is the data, I don't really know, but somewhere between 60 and 70% of platform engineering projects fail. If you are not mature, you don't actually deliver those DORA metrics. The kind of lowest maturity customers are still having 1 in 5 of their releases go bang before it gets to production. And it takes a lot of time to get to the point where you're getting to kind of single-digit change failure rates. And something like 45% of platform teams get stood up. They realize they've got the wrong capabilities, the wrong mission, the wrong tenants, either get disbanded or have to go through a strategic reorganization before they deliver value. And this certainly aligns with what I've seen customers doing over the last kind of 15 years. So if it's so hard, why do they fail? There's often a lack of a product mindset. People are treating it as a technology problem. They're standing up a whole bunch of tools and frameworks and open source libraries. They overcomplicate things. They're trying to make a platform that can support every workload your business has created in the last 5 decades and support them all in a seamless way, and not focus on the bit that's actually going to deliver value. Misalignment with stakeholders. We're going to build this amazing thing and then everybody's going to flock to our platform. They're not actually engaging with the right people to deliver the right things that matter. There are all kinds of cultural and organizational barriers. So people love working on the technical stuff. The cultural stuff is much harder. How do we actually give ownership? How do we get the practices and the culture around continuous improvement across the whole SDLC and not just as an engineering artifact? And finally, talking about measuring platform engineering, it's hard to measure this stuff. We've kind of agreed on DORA metrics. Some people are doing that, but what else? How do we actually communicate the value of this platform to our business stakeholders so that they continue to invest millions of dollars, sometimes tens of millions of dollars in this complicated, complex thing? So there are some secrets to success. Thankfully, in the cloud native world, it's not that secret. Everybody's working on this stuff in the open source, which I think is part of the power of platform engineering and the kind of cloud native movement. The first thing is if you build a product mindset and you hold the line and you keep going, you're going to get there. So actually, if you can just continue to get that leadership support, you get that investment, and you work with your developers, you get there. The challenge is it can take years. So a lot of the customers I work with, it took them half a decade of holding the line, having a VP who was willing to every year give them more budget, expand the budget. And for the first half of that time, actually you don't get a lot of value. So I think that the kind of the benefit we see follows this kind of Wardley S-curve where you're doing all this engineering, you're doing all this engineering, you're doing all this engineering. Hey, look, we've built really, really good platform fundamentals and look at how great our operations is. But it still really has only impacted 1 or 2 workloads within your organization. And there's some point where you suddenly stop pushing people onto the platform, and people then suddenly are attracted to the platform capabilities. And at that point, suddenly you unlock this value. But it's really, really difficult to get to that place. It's really easy to kind of keep pivoting when you're the kind of bottom of that trough of disillusionment before you start climbing up and finding and unlocking the value. So part of what I'm trying to do in this talk and the work we've been doing as part of the CNCF is how can we cut down the time to become a mature platform engineering team? And the way to do that is to look at what other people have done, look at the kind of things that have worked with the people who have been there from the beginning, and see how we can learn from those things, not make the same mistakes. We can make brand new, novel mistakes, which will be really exciting, but hopefully we won't make the same mistakes that we see over and over again. So part of the work that backs this up comes out of a group within the CNCF. The app development working group is a whole bunch of customers who are thinking about how do we do IDP and app development and platform engineering better. They wrote a white paper a couple of years ago that talked about what is a platform, what does platform engineering mean, how does this work? And then out of the back of that, they condensed this into a platform engineering maturity model. So this model looks at a number of aspects that are crucial to succeed in platform engineering, and then puts them across 4 levels of maturity. So to dive into them, the kind of 5 aspects are investment. How do you fund the team? Who's in the team? What's the structure? What's the kind of organizational investment? The adoption. So how are we thinking about user onboarding, building communities of practice, getting out into our organizations to encourage them to use our platform? What are the interfaces? So what are the APIs and tools and chatbots and portals that people are using to access our platform. Operations, so how we're operating the platform. Really importantly, lifecycle management. How are we retiring the things that we've built that we don't want to look after anymore? And finally, a framework for measurement. So how do we measure the value? How do we measure the value in a way that the business actually cares about, that we can communicate so we can ask for more money, more headcount, more investment year after year as we start to unlock value from our expanding platform? And then we can apply them across our 4 levels. So our provisional means, hey, we know this is important and we're building ad hoc manual requests and there's a ticket you raise and something happens. Operational is when we start to build structured processes. We have established repeatable practices. We've built some foundational tooling and automation that lets us start to scale this. And then we move all the way to full self-service capabilities, a full pull model where we're inner sourcing and we're getting contributions and we're growing adoption and we're building community practices within our organization. And finally, optimizing, we've got metrics, we've got mechanisms for continuous improvement in highly mature operations. And of course, we don't see that people get the same level of maturity across all the aspects. Actually, it's pretty spotty. So some people will be investing heavily in operations, other people are investing in measurement, and over time you'll see a kind of an evolving picture of where the kind of blind spots and where the strengths are in your platform. These things might not seem to fit. That's kind of fine. This is what we've seen in the last 5 years of platform engineering within this group. All organizations have their own dynamics, stuff that's specific to them, their own choices. And wow, the world is changing really, really fast. And what's kind of true yesterday might not be true tomorrow. So feel free to break free of any of this stuff if it doesn't make sense for you. So if we've got this kind of model based on what a whole bunch of customers are doing, how do we actually measure our maturity? The first thing to state is, it's not giving yourself a grade of A through F. I've turned up and I've got a B plus and so we can stop work now. The most important thing about a maturity assessment is not just understanding where you're at, but actually giving you an actionable to-do list of the right things to do to continue to evolve your platform. And that's an ongoing journey. So it's just an intermediary step before you actually work out what you should really be doing next. So what does this actually look like? It's a really sophisticated, powerful tool. It's an Excel sheet with 42 questions on it. So this is basically looking at that maturity framework. There's a whole bunch of characteristics that we see at each of those levels of maturity. This spreadsheet takes you through yes/no questions around some of the crucial things that we think matter. So do you actually have a dedicated platform team that's going to be assigned to build and maintain your platform as their primary responsibility? Now, these are yes/no questions. They're couched as yes/no questions. Some of them are obviously yes/no. As you go through the process, you might find some that are kind of maybes. Feel free to capture notes on them. So what I typically do in a workshop where I'm running these is I'll hide the kind of column with all the reds and the greens so people don't get afraid of saying no when they see it's a red. We ask these yes/no questions over the course of about an hour. I capture the answers on them. I'll capture some notes, some light notes whenever they say, well, we've got a product manager, but he's split between 3 projects and he does Mondays and Wednesdays on the platform team and he does the rest of the week on some other team. We'll say yes, but we'll put some caveats on it. And so there's all these questions you run through. At the end of that, you can go and take it and you can start to plot them onto a kind of map like this. So this is with a financial services customer, big customer, kind of typical for a financial services organization, relatively conservative, early in their journey. They've built some kind of foundational capabilities. They've got a platform team, but there's still kind of ones and twos across the board. So out of this report, we're able to uncover that they had some real strengths. Actually, there was a really strong exec mandate to, hey, let's go and do platform engineering. We're going to invest in that. They'd built a team, but they had really, really limited operational maturity. So a lot of manual processes, a lot of kind of ticket ops to get this stuff standing up. They had some basic measurement capabilities. So they were measuring some sort of core DORA metrics, mostly around the platform team itself, not the development teams who are building on the platform. And so they're really struggling to communicate that value to exec leadership about why they should ask for more money. And there was a kind of early stages of interfaces and blueprints, but not really self-service tooling and APIs. So through that, we were able to work out some really, really tangible next steps. Okay, we've got to build on the operational excellence. We've got to make sure the platform actually delivers a better experience than what people are coming from. We have to establish a measurement framework that's aligned to the KPIs of the business so we can continue to justify repeated investment. And we've got to really, really focus on developer experience. And that means we can't, we're a financial services organization. There's a whole bunch of technology in the org. We can't build a platform that suits everybody. We've really got to hone in onto a couple of business units who are really going to go invest in modern continuous delivery and build something that's going to suit their use case, that we can really demonstrate value, that we can then scale out across the rest of the org. So that gave us a quarterly roadmap. Let's go and try and do these things. Let's go and get exec sponsorship and move on. Looking at another customer, so this is a customer that's a couple of years into their platform engineering journey. They have got a really, really sophisticated Kubernetes ecosystem, really, really great operations and deployment and kind of rollout. Pretty comprehensive measurement framework, really, really strong technical foundations. But only about 20% of the workloads in the organization have decided to move over to the platform. So they built this amazing thing, and it's just not getting the traction. So for them, it's a completely different focus. They're missing that dedicated product management. They're missing that feedback loop between what the developers actually want to build and the kind of platform and the clusters that they're providing. They didn't have a centralized onboarding process. There's sort of stuff that was part of the platform team's responsibility, but lots of stuff was scattered around in other systems. So there's a Confluent page over there that talks about Java operations, and observability is owned by a different team, and you've got to go and speak to them about how we're going to manage your instrumentation. So they had this kind of really limited integration with the rest of the delivery lifecycle. So for them, it's a different journey. Actually, for them, it's about how do we go and build that closed feedback loop so we can really iterate on self-service capabilities, start to build community engagement, and drive adoption beyond those early adopters, the first couple of workloads that are keen to come over onto the platform. And so while it's not a linear process, we definitely see this journey that it starts off with investment, with something top down that says, hey, we want to go and do this thing. We've read the Gartner report. We want to go and get the most out of the cloud. Then moving on to building the operations. So how can we build sustainable processes, automation? And then it's where it starts to get kind of slightly stickier. And how are we actually going to build the interfaces that the business uses? How are we going to improve developer tooling? And then we get into the really soft stuff, the really squishy stuff. How are we going to create communities? How are we going to get people to actually use this stuff? How are we going to get our champions out in our wider org without growing our team bigger than the engineering teams we're trying to support? And then measurement. So I think that it's often forgotten. I think people hide behind the really, really simple metrics and don't actually bake it into what is the value that we're unlocking. And so I think that the real insight is that no matter how good your operations get, it's never going to drive adoption. So there are other techniques you have to use to drive adoption that are supported by your operations. If your operations are awful, you're not going to get adoption either. So there's a kind of an order you need to do things in. But yes, it's very, very easy to focus on step one. And I think that part of it is this, I really like this model. It's from a guy called Rod Heifetz, who talks about kind of leadership and change. And one of the ways that he talks about it is that we've got technical change. Technical change is, hey, we know the problem and we know the solution, and we can go and build some stuff that's going to go and solve that problem. So that might be migrating your CI/CD tools, upgrading Kubernetes versions, implementing new dashboards. And the people who are building platform teams are predominantly technical people. So they love this technical change, and we can get really, really into building new tools and capabilities. But actually what we need to do is adaptive change. We have to pivot our organizations. We know there's a problem, but we don't know how we're going to solve that problem with our context for our organization. So we've really got to exercise the muscles that are actually thinking about how do we build these complex, ambiguous problems? How do we help people learn? How do we iterate on how we're going to discover parts of our platform? And with this world, it's actually people and culture that are our primary focus. So this is where we're going to think about adapting our platform engineering culture, transferring to a DevOps mindset where we're actually finally going to bring developers and operations together in a way that they collaborate, building developer-centric organizations where our developers are close to the product and the use case. So if you'd like to go and run one of these things yourself, there's a link to the little spreadsheet up there. It's a pretty straightforward process. I would say that if you're going to do it yourself for the first time, give yourself 2 or 3 hours and have a copy of the maturity model white paper from the CNCF and work through the questions. If you'd like someone to go and do it for you, I'm from AWS. We've got an AWS booth over there. Come and chat to us and we'll come and help run them. If you've got someone who's a facilitator who knows how to do it and knows the right questions to ask, you can rattle through it in about an hour. Make sure you've got the right stakeholders in the room. So this is not a platform engineering exercise. This is an exercise that goes with your platform engineering team and the stakeholders. So that could be your operations people, developers, product managers, business stakeholders, leaders who are funding the program. Go through and answer your 42 questions, and then you can take that, uncover the hidden cell, look at your risks, identify the gaps, prioritize the things you actually think are achievable in the next kind of quarter or two, and then take that input and actually build that into a roadmap, clear priorities, owners, and success metrics. And it's designed deliberately to be a lightweight process. This isn't kind of a multi-day workshop. This is kind of just enough of a kind of high-level coarse-grained view that tells you, hey, these are the priorities for the next 3 months. Now we can go and dive deep and work out how we're actually going to go and execute on those priorities within our organization for the next iteration. So hopefully it's something that you can do multiple times over the course of a year as you build new capabilities, as the platform engineering ecosystem evolves. So what I'm hoping that this is going to do is help us get from the start all the way to actually delivering some of this promise of platform engineering in less than half a decade. If we can get it from half a decade to 18 months, I think that's going to be a really impressive benefit. And I'm certainly seeing early results with the customers that we're doing this with of really focusing on the right things to do next. But I've got a couple of minutes nearly at the end of my presentation. I haven't talked about AI yet. So, I think it's a really interesting time at the moment for platform engineering. Everything in that model is being disrupted by AI, and there is no maturity. Like everything is at the provisional stage. I think there's a really interesting group as part of the CNOE project that I'm working on, which is the team that put together that capabilities map called CAPE. Community AI Platform Engineering. The CNCF all love a kind of C-based acronym. This is a really interesting space where customers are looking at across all of the areas of that kind of the 5 pillars of the maturity model, how we can use agents and AI and technology to do it. And so hopefully this is kind of the early stages of understanding what mature AI in platform engineering might look like in the next few years. Following along, it's already changed a lot in the last 3 months. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff happening there. So kind of any of those communities, the kind of CNCF Applications Working Group, the Canoe project, the CAPE project, if you want to kind of dive deeper and have a kind of role doing that, then those are great places to have a look.